Welcome to the Directors UK podcast. We're the professional association for UK film and TV directors. No matter the format, no matter the genre, our featured directors share their approach to the craft. We hope you enjoy.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Andy Harrower, CEO at Directors UK. It's lovely to see you all here. Tonight we have in conversation Jon M with Josie Rourke on Wicked. Enjoy. Thank you.
Check. There it is.
Yeah, that is.
There it is.
That was so funny. After like a truly great celebration of music and musical theatre, that felt like a really bad piece of musical theatre coming down the stairs. I had the delight and joy of seeing this amazing film last night that you've just seen now. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that Jon is at the end of a gigantic press tour with this movie. You were just saying this is your last event before you get to...
My last event. I leave on an airplane tomorrow at 7 a.m. And in the middle of it all, I had a baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, my wife had the baby, but yes, I did.
So if you do not give this man the best 30 minutes of his life, it's seriously on you. Isn't it a wonderful film? And it's the most beautiful marrying, I think, of deep technical expertise and craft and emotion. And I was just saying to Jon outside, I know a couple of the actors in the film. I'm mainly a theatre director, and I used to run a theatre, and I don't think I've ever seen them be so good. And to do something that is such an epic achievement, and for you to also manage to extract performances that are so truthful from them, I think is really beautiful. I want to talk to you about that a bit.
Yes.
But actually, seeing as this is a room of directors, what is it like to be at the end of this epic promotional tour? Like, what is that? How do you know, when I talk, I've done this once and it was impossible to not repeat myself. It was possible to not start hating myself. Like, where are you right now? Are you full of love for yourself?
It feels right and poetic to be with fellow directors here today because it just, you know. And I feel my heart is very full. Having a new baby, the third since starting Wicked, none of them twins. And we still got a year left for part 2. It's been a journey. I've moved my family here, and it makes sense to be back in London. We had a great time. They went to school here. All the hundreds and thousands of hands that have touched this movie, the craftsmen and women who the miniature artists, the painters, all the people. It feels really right to be here. So thank you for having us here, and thank you for doing this.
Oh, no, it's a fantastic opportunity for me to talk to you in more detail about it. And I want to get into some of the elements of the film in detail. And it might be, we'll open up some questions that there's a chance to go, tell me about this moment, or how did you achieve this? And one of the things I've been doing over the past few days since I knew I was going to chat to you was reading, I've not finished it yet, but your amazing memoir, which I don't know if anybody's taken a look at, but I strongly encourage any director from any craft to read it. And it begins with this amazing idea that you were born in the future, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that you were born in the very heart of Silicon Valley, a moment that was exceptionally... was a revolution in terms of technology. Yep. And so, am I right thinking that you began your journey as a filmmaker by working out how to do stuff? Is that right? Is that a good way of...
Yeah, absolutely. It was growing up in the Silicon Valley in the 80s and 90s in a Chinese restaurant. My family had moved there. They met there. I'm the youngest of 5 kids. And the restaurant... amazingly, as I was sort of looking back on it, is a house of stories. My parents, being one of the only Asians at that time in 1969, got to know this community, and they got to know them by telling the stories of their family. And so I was around that. I was folding napkins at the bar with a cup full of cherries and doing my homework. And I would hear all the people telling about their lives and their things. And my dad would tell them, "Oh, my son's really into filming stuff," because they had given me a camera to really carry around for vacation. But I started to cut some things together, use the VHS tapes and VCRs, and they were like, "Oh, we have this new technology to digitize footage, and it'll make his life different." And so they would give us beta computers and beta software from Adobe, from Apple, from Radius, and Video Vision, Media 100. And so at 11, 12 years old, I'm getting a micronet data dock with a SCSI thing that I could have a hot swappable, removable drives at a time when you couldn't do that. So I was, in a weird way, it's sort of the outliers thing. I was at this moment in time where I got to be ahead of it. And so even when I went to film school, and even changed your thinking, as the internet was going sort of public, I got to see the World Wide Web before many people. A customer took me to their office and said, "You got to see this thing. Think about any company and put .com after it." And I was like, whoa. And so I think my mind turned nonlinear, maybe before the world turned nonlinear and hyperlink style. And yet I went to USC and they weren't converted yet. Everything was filmed there and they were holding that. So I got to understand what a bin was, a real bin. When I went to film school, I started cutting in 16 or Super 8 or 35 on a flatbed. And then I got to learn what a splice really was. And I got the cuts on my fingers to prove it. So in a weird way, I got it inside out. But because of that, I always felt like it is technology that allowed me the tools to find a voice that I did not know I had. And it was, in a weird way, technical first, because I just had to figure it out.
That really struck me from reading it, that actually you turned up at film school just with this extraordinary bank of technique, and then they made you put it away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I cheated too, though. Sometimes, we had to cut sound on mag, and so you have to get it onto the mag, and you have to have different tracks, and they only allowed you a certain amount of tracks. And so I would make my tracks in, I forget I don't know what I would do it in at that point, but I'd put it in my computer and do my tracks, and then I would separate it in different tracks, and I'd record each one out, and then I'd put fake splices in it sometimes. So I wasn't always the most truthful in some of those things.
Something you said that was really interesting, which is that you became non-linear really early on. And the form of musical theatre, which I know a little of, has all of these ideas of rules and linearity to it and all of those things. How do you think your non-linear imagination jumps into that medium?
I also grew up in a time of music videos and commercials that became basically music videos. Music at my fingertips. I think I'm part of the first generation of both Napster and LimeWire, where you didn't have to buy a CD anymore. We were at school and suddenly this LAN opened up and everyone was sharing. This is actually before Napster. We were sharing each other's music. You could type in a song that you couldn't even afford to get, and you could get any song. And that alone opened up your brain to taste and things that we did not have. So again, maybe we were 2-3 years ahead of everybody else to get access to that. And we were sharing taste. And so I think part of it is we got exposure really quickly. It's also, that was the rise of loopy tunes or something like that, where it was digital music and new music creation. So there are people in my dorm room who were creating loops and music from loops and were playing at parties, and this was a very new thing at that point. So again, creativity rising from something very technical, and we were, in a way, it was not really hacking things. We're not programming anything, but we're hacking things together to create something that felt a traditional medium, and I think that changes your brain automatically. Yeah. You suddenly have access to all these things, and so in terms of musical numbers, I also got cable for the first time when I went to school, and this is early 2000, 98, 99, and early 2000. So suddenly it was this burst of making the band and pop music and Britney Spears and NSYNC. So I'm consuming this, and of course all the Michael Jackson stuff you could download and have suddenly at your fingertips instead of having it on VHS tape, which I was obsessed with. So to me, Michael Jackson was the modern musical. Plus I had access to all the old musicals that I used to watch, and we grew up watching musicals and going to shows every weekend. My parents were very insistent that we lived American culture, and that we acted American, and that we didn't have accents, and so that was pressed upon us very, very deeply. So I was embedded in pop culture, and I loved it. And so I think when I think of and it's also the golden age of Walt Disney animation musicals. So
Pixar was growing through this moment
Pixar
as
was
well.
coming a little bit later, but
yeah.
it was definitely in that zone. I guess, Toy Story, which
Little
was a
Mermaid was
musical,
before that,
but
yeah,
Little
yeah.
Mermaid,
Yeah.
Beauty and the Beast, Lion King, Aladdin. So my sense of America was this era of Ronald Reagan, Walt Disney, Michael Jackson, Madonna, MTV, and technology of Steve Jobs and Microsoft, and we were getting in the internet. So those things combined, I guess, speak to how music played so naturally in my storytelling. And I think I sort of had to unwind myself from that hyperlink idea over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. And I was really interested to read as well that you were in a Stephen Sondheim musical as.
Yes, it was. Yes.
And was that your first paid show business gig?
Yes, I may have. No, yeah, I think that was because I was an extra in a Nickelodeon show one summer because my friend was on it, and I, when you're a filmmaker, as you all know, and you're a young person doing it, there's not many access points. Maybe now because you have your phone and you can cut things on it, but at that time, the only access point to being a part of this was through theater.
Yeah.
And you couldn't necessarily I just want to do lighting. I'm not sure that path. If you couldn't act, then you go do the lighting. But so it was through theater. We do shows and stuff, and I auditioned for a professional tour that was coming through of Pacific Overtures by Stephen Sondheim, and they needed one little boy to sing "The Boy in the Tree," and it was a cast full of all Asian actors, which to me I didn't know the significance of that. And Mako, this legendary actor, was in it as well. So I got to be in this amazing cast, and I was not great. I guess I was cute enough to get through, but being in it, seeing this Asian excellence in an all Asian cast felt very normal to me, very young.
Yeah, it's an amazing experience.
Yeah.
How old's your oldest kid? Because you have 5 kids.
7.
Amazing.
So I have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 1-year-old, and a 9-day-old.
Whoa. I mean, we're so lucky to have you here. Thank you very much.
Thank my wife. She actually was
Yeah.
like, you just got to get me home from the hospital, then you can go talk about your movie. So,
Wow. What's your 7-year-old's relationship to a phone, a camera, a lens, a story?
I mean, she didn't have a phone or anything like that, but she, there's a part of us that wants her to understand it intrinsically because we know that's going to happen, but not the internet. It's more like she loves to use the camera. She sees me shooting all the time, so she likes to take pictures with it. And during Wicked, when we started Wicked, I had to explain to her what Wicked is, what Wizard of Oz is, and every time we got auditions, she would watch the auditions. She had no idea who Ariana Grande was. She had no idea what the winged monkeys were, so she got to see from the ground up. Like, these are the ideas. What kind of yellow should the yellow brick road be? What? How do you think? What kind of root should the broomstick be? I have these mangrove roots that when they join, they actually merge together. Should that be it, or should it just be one root? And so she got to see that, and then we got to London, and she started to go to school here, and she got to see the actual physical things being built, and the prototypes, and the sets start to go up, and then the actors arrive, and picking the green of the color, and how many freckles, and does she have green eyes or not, and what kind of hat, how high. A hat that's foldable, hats that's not foldable, the brims that are bigger and smaller for different lighting situations. How many cameras? She wanted to understand what's camera 1 and camera 2. And so at 7 years old, she was here. She just left today to see then people discovering what we've known for the last 3 years of our lives. It was fascinating to watch her. At the premiere, she was on the edge of her seat like this watching, and she'd ask me questions like, what does confusifying mean?
Do you have any notes?
I'm sure she has notes. Everyone has notes. Let's be
Everybody
real.
has notes. I just want to talk a little bit. Just this is my kind of burning director question, because there's something you do so brilliantly in this film, and also I think the first 10 minutes of In the Heights are amongst probably the greatest beginning of a musical for me, because of how you take this thing that is generally in a kind of classical, conventional musical theatre piece there, which is show the world. And I'm mainly a theatre director, right? And that's a nightmare because they're like, you can have 12 props and 14 people and really good luck with that. It's good fun to do and it's good fun to imagine. But the way you translate the introduction of a world onto a screen through that very specific requirement of a musical, I think is so extraordinary. And I just wanted to understand a little bit about how you even begin to wrap your head around it, because whenever I do that with huge constraint, and you do it with, theoretically, you can do anything you want to do in order to do it. And I just, would you talk about that a bit for me?
Yeah, yeah, it's true. I don't, everything I've done, even when it's like a dance movie and they're like, you have like $10 for this thing. What I found is I think you have to dream big no matter what. Like that's the whole point of cinema. It's the whole point of taking an audience to something that they can't see anywhere else. So for me, and I've done it enough that I've trusted that if you give people a vision, they will get there if it's inspiring enough, if it makes sense to what you're trying to do. And so, something like in Dancing Through Life, for instance, to me, I listen to the music and I feel like what it feels like, because to me music is it's the extension of what music is supposed to be saying, and it's beyond dialogue, it's movement, how it feels to move, but also the lyrics itself. And so, I mean, I feel like I can imagine anything. Like, to me, if I were to make a musical number in here, it's play. I would love to see little feet end up on these little footstools and start to walk around, and this thing rise all the way to the top. So the little tables become poles, and we use that. And so to me, and we go through that, and all of a sudden these chairs turn around, and there's and water starts to drip down, and it's a waterfall with the chairs. And like to me, if that's what it feels like to dream of what's happening in this moment, then I like to challenge our great crew to go play in that way. And so for Dancing Through Life, it was like we played a lot with circles and this idea of circular things in Oz that is sort of the forced wizard upon nature. So everything in nature is sort of not full circles. It's sort of swirls, but in shiz, and all the places that the wizard has touched is sort of these bubbles and balloons that have complete circles, and they're made to not break. And yet Elphaba is going to come here and crack that. She's going to be the Z in Oz. She's everything with her. She's the sharp edges in this. And this first time for Fiyero was this idea that there was the first cracks in it were to how to break the rules with the shiz students. And so we created this thing we called the tornado wheel that we wanted to spin and have them do a dance with, and there's ladders that sort of create the cracks a little bit, and that took like a huge engineering feat, and we had to convince everyone that it was worth the money and the time. But also what we had to understand was, how is Oz different than any other land that we've been to? It is not Hogwarts, and it's not Neverland. So what is it, and what defines Oz? And to me, and that's the first thing we had to do, is create culture here. In Oz, to me, it was if Neverland is about kind of the playful child brain and what you do when you make believe, and then in Wonderland for Alice is a place that things are so odd that it's meant to drive you crazy and insane. Then Oz is a place, if the wizard is there, he's trying to delight and distract you. So everything we did had to have delight to it. Nothing could feel earthly. So even how buttons lay on the coat, it couldn't just be buttons that were in a straight line. Like, what's the odd thing? What's the thing that delights you? Oh, there's a curve to it, and there's only 3 buttons or whatever, and 1 button's half. So you just like look at things a little bit differently. And so when you're talking about book stacks, it was so clear, like, we can't do stacks. Let's go with the O and build a bookshelf that turns. So that's, and once you start to put that into motion, the engineering and the manpower that had to go into building that thing, and then how do you do choreography in there? Well, we didn't get it until 2 weeks before shooting, because it was such a massive build. They didn't want to spend the money until the last second when we knew we were making it. And then the choreographer's like, well, I can't really choreograph on it. I don't even know what kind of dancers to hire, because I don't know how it feels to turn into something. So we built little models, and then they would pretend, they would get a skeleton crew and pretend and shoot things on the iPhone of kind of the things we could do. And then when we actually got it 2 weeks before, then we're like, okay, oh wow, we need parkour people and breakers to do this. It can't just be regular people. And then you get in there and, oh, we need pads here because they're going to fall. And that's the thing. Oh, the ladders, they can't actually walk across. It's too dangerous. If you fall, it's not great. So they put plexiglass that we will paint out later. So we put a little plexiglass to keep people safe up there. And then you build from there. And then there's no, because they built this out of scratch, there's no actual numerical controls of this. The stunt people for safety have to, or the special effects people have to be running this circle. And then what's the speed of the circle? Well, there's, I don't know, what is it? Fast, medium, slow? Or like what number? So they have these random engineering numbers that we don't. So Chris and I have to learn the numbers and what they mean and the speed. Then the dancers have to get on those numbers and decide, oh, we can do this, we can do that. So they're offering up stuff. And then we have to put the whole thing together. And then the camera has to go through it. And those ladders can clip the camera at any moment. So you can do anything with an iPhone, but with an Alexa 65 on a fucking Technicrane, like everyone's scared to do it. And then the insurance company comes in and says, Johnny cannot actually go in there. And so we have to record what he would do so that they would be approved the thing. And by that time we're 2 days out. And so anyway, there's a lot that goes into that. But by seeing it through, you get something that looks sort of simple and that's always been there. But there's a lot of thought and that's really satisfying. That's really fun.
So beautiful. Isn't that amazing? So beautiful. And it's so fantastic to have you go from everything Oz does is a complete circle, it's a bubble, right the way through to we need to not crush a parkour.
Yeah.
Bloke.
Yeah. Or behead your lead actor in there because that would not be great. But Johnny then puts it at ease. Because he gets in there, and if he gets comfortable enough, then it starts to feel like it's always been there, and he's supposed to be doing that, which is the goal.
So how do you do that? Like have an idea, like in Popular, where there's just like a lot of, one even that smaller scale, like amazing work going on, ambitious, physical, not endangerment, but they're doing stuff. Yeah. Those women in that number where you're like, wow, okay, like congratulations, that's extremely brave. What is the journey you go on with them? Like, how much do you include them in the process of creating it as a technical piece of apparatus? Yeah. Or do you just go, come on, it just works like this. Jim will show you.
So Popular specifically, there's a great amount of engineering in there. If you actually, it's in a weird way, a puppet. And we have large men in small areas, like pulling wires and doing things to make those gadgets work, and weeks and weeks of engineering to make those boxes pop open because they're actually really heavy because they have to hold weight and they have to do things and without like looking janky and moving all the time, which was a huge issue. Every time those things open, they shake and all the jewelry shakes and all the makeup shakes. And so to make it seem elegant, that's a whole nother pass on it. But for Popular specifically, it was, how do we create a space? And we looked at how the show did it by, it's just a canvas, and Kristen Chenoweth is painting the painting, but a lot of it is working with the crowd. Like it is, in a weird way, the show, what we realized is sort of, is she's hosting the night. And it has vaudevillian feel to it. So even those moments, she's looking at the audience, she's working it, and we don't have that access to the audience. So, okay, how do we, and what are the strengths of Ariana Grande in those? And so the reality of shooting in a dorm room, Nathan Crowley, our production designed something that has to be convincingly that it could be a suite, but big enough that you could have like 4 scenes and a musical number in there and not feel like you're trapped in walls. So we create these little bubble areas. And then we thought, these bags that will come in here, that can change the space for us at any given scene. And within those bags, what we won't know is that the reveal will be in Popular, that those bags will open up and the whole thing was her closet the whole time. We had a version where, and I'm sorry, to really answer your question, these are things that it's not scripted. So I told them to sort of script it broadly because I know I won't know until I get into and working with my crew to really start to bespoke the space and the things to get the best idea version of that. So there was a version where, and I go home and I write out each lyric and what's happening, and I'll draw a little like thumbnails, and I'll bring the whole production crew in because they don't know what they're building and know what they're doing. So I walk them in, and for every 2 days I'll walk them through a musical number, and they're writing notes of what to build and what to do, and they're asking questions like, oh, so how do you, what do you want? So I'm saying this is happening here, and this thing, and this gadget opens, and so that's the starting point. And of course, once I get that, I get sort of feedback, and I also, our choreographer is listening, and I worked with Chris Scott for many years, so he knows that then I'll give him space to go play with a skeleton crew. So then he'll take two dancers and just start to play with stuff, and the special effects team will build little fake versions of it, cardboard versions of it, and maybe he'll come up with different kind of cabinets than I came up with, or he'll say, you know what, that cabinet thing doesn't work, it doesn't. So he'll start to play, and then I'll refine. So there was a version where she goes into a closet, and in the closet she keeps turning corners, and it gets bigger. The closet just keeps going. And what I found in the first time I pitched it, well, people loved it, but Mark Platt had a question. He's like, so is that magic? Because if she has magic, then that kind of defeats the story purpose. And you're like, oh yeah, I can't use the sort of rules of a musical and saying, well, in musical world, it's just expression. When you actually have, as a story point, people who have magic, someone who has magic and someone who doesn't. So that really changed it for me. Oh, this has to be actually like physical, real things in her room. So then that said, okay, everyone focus in on these bags and what shape and sizes of different bags. So the props department is designing different sizes of bags and what can happen. And I'm coming up with ideas of what if this thing unfolds, and what if the mirror opens up, and then they look in the mirror, and then the folds down, and the whole thing turns into steps that she can go up. And so anyway, that's sort of the process. And then you get the actors to come in, and I sort of present it very loosely to them. I say, here's the ideas of what we're trying to do. It may work, it may not. Right now, you're going to learn some muscle memory just to get your body moving. We also watch them doing this, so we know what they can do. And then we'll start to take things away. You know what? This is crowding her moment. She needs time to work the beginning. So you don't have that first gadget, take that gadget off, take that gadget off. And then and we'll see also the effectiveness as the gadgets start to come in, then she'll start to play with it. She might find something really great. The chandelier is something that we had an idea of. I didn't think it would work. But as soon as she jumped on and grabbed it, we were like, oh, fuck, she's gonna kill this one. And she loved that. I was fully prepared to remove everything if that were the case, and get back to just nothing. But she owned that stuff, and working with Cynthia, who didn't just want to be someone who was sitting there, she wanted to really engage, because this, in the movie versus the show, in the movie, this was really important for the relationship. They were falling in love in this. This wasn't just wasn't just a thing for Glinda to do. This was a really important moment. We had just loved that they became friends, and here she was going to, in a weird way, give her some optimism.
Yeah.
Right in that scene before, she says, it's not your fault. It was the milk flower's fault. And oh, look, it's tomorrow. And the look that Elphaba gives her.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
Oh, it's like everything that you judged her for is the things that you love about her. And I think you can hear it in the audience. They do it. They feel the same.
Yeah. Beautiful. Look, should we throw up some questions? Oh, yeah. Hello, gentleman up there.
Really amazing and inspiring. And I wanted to know kind of like what the process was like for you to become the director of this. Like, were you approached? Is there a casting website for A-list directors that none of us know about? What is the process like to kind of become this?
Well, this was a rare one for me. I mean, first of all, I saw the show before I was on Broadway, and I was at film school at that time, and I was like, wow, this is the most cinematic show I've ever seen. Someone's going to do a great job at this. And as soon as I got my first jobs in Hollywood, I was doing studio movies, I would put my calls in to, or have my team go call Mark Platt or the studio, be like, hey, are you guys doing Wicked? John, he loves musicals, he wants to do this. We never got our call back. It was just dead. And they would hire other directors, and I waited 20 years and be like, when is this movie going to, I really want to see this movie. I know what this movie could be. And it was during the pandemic, and I had just done In the Heights. And as I was finishing In the Heights, technically it's my first musical, even though I feel like even Crazy Rich Asians feels like a musical to me. But I felt like they keep talking and keep announcing Wicked, and they never do it. So I wrote my agents. I was like, hey, if there's one movie, and the pandemic was happening, I was like, I'm just going to say it out loud. Like, I want to do Wicked. I just did a musical. I know how to do this. And clearly no one there is making this. And I know how to get this made. I make movies. I'm not just like developing movies. And just so happens this time they call back because they had heard about In the Heights. And I shared the movie with Donna Langley, and I didn't have to pitch anything. I got the offer there, right then and there. And so I had one conversation with Mark Platt to sort of warn me of the difficult things they have been through in order to try to get this movie made, the creative differences throughout the years or the holdups. And the fact is, like, they didn't need to make this movie, and was it the right moment to make this movie? And so, and there's a lot of baggage that comes with this, because it was such a huge effort to get that show up, and there's a lot of personalities. So as soon as I was down, I knew I've worked with I worked with Lynn, I've worked with Kevin Kwa, and I know how to take these. And I know what this is. I think he hired me skeptically. He was like, "Okay, you prove to us that we need to make this," and that was always the bar. Like, we don't have to make this, and so it's my job to every day show them why this movie needed to be made urgently, that this had a relevant thing, and this is the time. And part of that was finding Cynthia and Ariana that they were the right Elphaba and Galindas to speak to this day, but also be the show itself. And that this moment after COVID, when the curtains have been pulled on the storyteller, and suddenly you're like, wait, who's in control? Who said a villain should look like this? Who said a hero should look like this? Who said beauty is this? And the Yellow Brick Road, maybe it wasn't made for us in the first place. And there is no wizard that's going to save us on the other side. Like, that felt urgent story that we all felt when she says the words, something has changed within me. Something's not the same. I remember during that lockdown, I was like, I think that's what the whole world feels. And we're so scared of what that next step is. And this movie speaks to that someone could come around, a strong man can come around and then dictate, because everyone's so fearful about what it is. And this is an important thing to make now.
Shall I just sit with that for a moment?
So this was weird. This was a weird one.
No, it's an excellent question. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just going to re-plug your memoir as well, because I think that there is an extraordinarily honest and frank and beautiful and soulful sense of how you became the filmmaker you are within it, going right back to, your beginnings and how you became inspired. And I can absolutely, looking at that book, see just that kind of silvery thread into this movie in the most beautiful way. So, yeah, I would.
And I can say very clearly, like, there's no genius thing that I have. There is no. I look at other filmmakers and I'm like, wow. I don't know how that comes out of them. That is amazing. I don't have that. It's a lot of hard work and a lot of grit and a lot of learning and being curious and trying to continue to get better in the things that I do. Understand? I mean, I came into this business. I didn't know what coverage was, because I didn't even make videos or commercials before I got my first studio feature film. I mean, I was thrown in there. I may be good at bullshitting, so maybe that helped me get my first movie. But once you get your first movie, you got to learn how to make a movie. And it took me 6 studio movies to feel like I wasn't bullshitting anymore. That I think I hit my 10,000 hours and I understood. So yeah, that it's. The magic is there is no magic, for me at least. And again, everybody has their own. Somebody here has, maybe several people here has some sort of genius thing that connects to some spiritual world, and that I'm excited for your movie. But for me, it was like inch by inch. How do I get better? What am I doing? How am I getting? Oh, I don't need to prove my storytelling to anybody. Okay, then who am I? And what makes me so scared of my own story? And then when you share that in Crazy Rich Asians and you see people respond like, oh, maybe I do have something valuable to share. And for me, I've grown up. Not just in the future, but in front of the world through my movies, and they can judge them each however they want. But each one is a chapter of how I've learned to become a filmmaker. And this was sort of, I guess, me using all those things to actually pull the levers in the way that I felt like was right to tell a story that I think was in me all this time.
Amazing. Yes, gentleman there in the yellow T-shirt.
Hi, I absolutely love the film. I wanted to ask you about the tone of it, because at times it's very heightened and camp at times, but also it's not at the expense of the emotion. And there's that letter writing scene where they're kind of talking out what they're thinking, and there's also, I think I saw a fourth wall break at times as well too, with Ariana Grande looking directly to camera. And I wondered if you had rules about that, and what was your general approach for tone for the film?
Yeah. Yeah, tone is the hardest thing because I think that's what directors actually are doing, and sometimes it's not. You can't write it down. Sometimes it's hard to explain. But for me, it is how I see the world. I think the world is very silly and crazy, and playful. But I also, as I get older and have kids and finding myself, I do also think those things are, comedy, and what do they say? It's a tragedy without dignity. Like, I just think it's within that there's the truth of where life lives. And so for me, because music and movement play on the same level tonally as the comedy, like I don't separate those two. So I don't feel like I'm, at least in my instincts, I'm not trying to balance the two. I'm just I'm following my instincts on those things. So that's part of it. That said, and you can look at Crazy Rich Asians. It kind of has this lyrical element to it, but also what I'm really following is Rachel Chu's search for self-worth through that, not her financial worth, but her self-worth. And so, for me, it's like the sort of saneness within the insanity. I come from a big family, so like I think I'm the sane one, and my family's insane, and so I like that sort of Buster Keaton thing of you're surrounded by this crazy world. That's why I love Elphaba. Because she's in an insane musical world. And this is something I found to help my tone, actually, ultimately. I didn't know that I was going to have cameras whip up and down. I didn't know that until we started shooting. And I started experimenting with that because it felt like Ariana was offering these moments up. And I couldn't actually, every time I backed out, it felt like we were losing something. And every time I was forward, like, that's where I want to be. And so these sort of nods and twists and turns felt like that came organically, and I didn't know if they were going to work, so I did several versions of that. So what I discovered that really helped me on that is when you go see the show, you walk into a theater and it's designed like Oz. There's a map, there's a thing, so you're automatically like, I'm walking into Oz. And the bubble comes down, you're like, that's what should happen. And then this green girl walks in, you're like, what's that? And everybody laughs at her, and she's the joke. It's Elf. She comes in and into this world, and she doesn't know how to fit into this world. And so then they have to like kind of buy over time your empathy for her because she's the joke. In a movie, the audience is different. Like just by nature, we're into a blank canvas in a black room, and it goes dark, and we present a world, and you have about 10 minutes to convince this crowd to buy into that world or not. And you set the rules, you know all this, but when in this world, then we're presenting a musical. So people who don't like musicals or don't think they like musicals or whatever the heck that means, that they're wondering like, do I buy in? Oh, she's in her bubble and they're singing and they're burning this thing. Am I in? And at that moment, the green girl drops in, and she's the normal one. She's the one looking around like, what the fuck is happening here? And why does she live in this dorm room? Like, this is insane. And to me, that changed our way in, that she is our vehicle through this insane world. And then in Wizard and I, Morrible says, you should come here tonight. And she walks, I see you in class. And then she whispers at the quietest part with almost no music. She says, did that really just happen? Did I actually, all that stuff. And you're like, oh, she sings too. She sings too. Okay, so, and then as she grows, she starts at the very bottom of Shiz, and not touching the water, because we make sure she doesn't touch any water, but the frogs, she connects with nature. Oh, and the frogs see her. They're not running away from her. They see her. Oh, and then the cricket flies just a little bit further, and then the bees go towards her as the Aussians are running away from her, and then the butterflies ascend, and then the bluebirds fly over the rainbow, and she's ready, and now she's belting, and it's so big, and she actually shows a little leap with her relationship with gravity. So she gets to the edge of this thing, and you want her to jump, and she's not ready to jump yet. And so when the form of the medium helps us understand what it's like to be her, the character, that to me was the power of what we had all of a sudden by switching that perspective. Then it was like, okay, the music, whether we talk about it or not, is a part of our communication of her outsideness and how she's going to overcome that. Because we know by defying gravity, which is the end of this movie, and it has to feel emotionally satisfying, that she was going to have the biggest note of them all. And when she rises, that she was going to have to say, it's me not proving yourself to someone else, not the wizard, not trying to fit in and be accepted by anybody, that it's me. And by tracking that helped sort of just set our foundation of where we were headed with the story. And the ridiculous on top of that was just the ridiculousness on top of that. And then there's a whole Glinda side of that, of what that actually ridiculousness means, and how, what is popular actually. It's a form of influence, and what does that power mean, and how exhausting that could be for somebody, and when do you show those cracks in her, and how do you show that? So that's a whole other thing. But that track really helped me understand what the joke of this movie was, or what the true story of what we're trying to say in this.
Brilliant answer. Have we got time for one more? I'm going to ask this lady here. Sorry.
Hi, Jon. Thank you so much for this film. I'm a big fan of the film and Wicked, of course. I just wondered if you could talk a bit about how you worked with Ariana and Cynthia and the rehearsal process, but how you also went about, you said dreaming big and playing, and what that fed into and how that was different for both characters.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know how to work with actors when I started making my movies. Like, we were hiring dancers for Step Up. We wanted dancers. That'd be their first language. And I used editing, because that's where I started. I used editing to cover for whatever was lacking in actors. It wasn't until, but they had a spirit, and I love that. But it wasn't until Now You See Me where I was working with the best actors, from Morgan Freeman, Michael Caine, and Mark Ruffalo, and Woody Harrelson, Jesse Eisenberg. And to me, I was enamored by what they were doing on the camera. I was like, wow, they knew these characters because they had done already a movie. And it freed me, it allowed me to play with them. It allowed me to not have to worry about the lines or the emotional sort of motion of these characters. They did all the homework. They were just so natural, and they had humor that I didn't have, and I could use the camera to play with that. And I loved that experience. I felt the power of when you cast things right. Not that the other things weren't cast right. I loved all of them, and they were very, very good. But I didn't know how to utilize that. And so when Crazy Rich Asians, and we plucked people from roles there was no roles for them. We plucked them and put them in. I could lean into them because they were really, really good and really experienced, and they all became movie stars essentially, from Gemma, and to Henry Golding, and to Constance, and to Jimmy O Yang, and to all these people. And same thing with In the Heights. Like, it was fun to find people that they had to have the ability. They had to have enough ability to play, is what I found, is what I work best with. And so when we were looking for Glinda and Elphaba, everybody wanted to come out for that. We did not offer it to anybody. You had to audition. It doesn't matter who you are, including Ariana and Cynthia. And we already knew Ariana wanted this. She had reached out years before I ever was on board. And I had a lot of skeptical thoughts about, can Ariana Grande be? And in my mind, I was like, no, you can't. You can't put like a giant brand like that on a giant brand of Wicked. That feels like strange and weird. But when Ariana came in, she came in 3 or 4 or 5 times. I don't remember exactly. The first time she came in, she did just well enough that I was like, that's interesting. She's actually really funny. She looks like Ariana Grande. It's still Ariana Grande, and I don't know if she would be willing to like take that mask off, but she was very interesting. She wasn't an imitation, that's for sure. It's the first time I felt like I met Glinda in the room, not a character in a show, but a real person that show was based off of. And the third time I brought her in, and we brought her in with other people to chemistry read with, not Cynthia yet. We never actually chemistry read them, but other Elphabas. And she was the most interesting person in the room. You couldn't take your eyes off her. She was just getting deeper and deeper. And so I could put a chair in front of her and say, Glinda, jump over the chair. And she would jump over. I didn't have to tell her what to do. She would jump over in the way you think, yeah, that's the best way that Glinda would jump over that. So, and with Cynthia, she came in, and I didn't think she had necessarily the innocence of I knew how good she was, and I wasn't going to bring her in until she did. And she came in jeans and a T-shirt. And she had just the night before sold out, like, the Walt Disney Concert Hall. And now she's here. And I imagined her, like, iconic in her big dress. But she was here. And the way she sang in Wizard and I mean, she booked this thing in, 25 seconds. It was so vulnerable and so young. She felt like a little girl dreaming. I always say it's like when I was dreaming in a dorm room to be a filmmaker. Like I felt it so hard. If I felt it, then these words that I've heard many, many times in ways that I'd never heard before. So just starting there was a great position because, again, they never read together, but I knew if you find the perfect Galinda and you find the perfect Elphaba, then you should make this movie. And they had this little slight, they felt so contemporary in a old-fashioned way, if that makes sense. Like they both feel timeless, and especially the way Ariana turned into Galinda, it felt like she was doing this like weird transatlantic accent, and she felt like an old movie star. And so it sort of also framed the tone a little bit of like, oh, we are telling a timeless story, and we're going to break that, and it's going to get sort of more modern as the emotions get more interesting. So anyway, that in those rehearsals were really interesting. So we would just come into my room, and they were those characters. They were living them. I don't know if they would call themselves method, but they were these people, and their lives were changing too. So we built a trust that we could talk about their real life and the transitions they were going, and how does that connect with Galinda? How does that connect with Elphaba? And suddenly these words started to come out, and we would speak the words first out loud, not sing them. The singing was the easy part. We didn't even have to be technical. I never had to deal with their singing. So we could just, and they didn't like to sit in chairs for rehearsal. We had to sit on, they would want to sit on the floor. So we just do which is why their scene is on the floor right before Popular. Because I didn't know where to block them. It didn't feel natural. And they're like, just do it. We did it. So we just sat on the floor. So anyway, it was a very nice, trusting relationship that we all had. And I had to see it through that whatever we shot, I always say we weren't making the movie when we're shooting it. We're playing every time. And then I'm going to take those little jars of butterflies and we're going to bring it to the edit room. And I promise you, I'll protect you on those things. But let's every day, don't worry about what movie we're making. Let's worry about this moment right here with these two characters that you guys know and are living. So that was sort of just chipping away.
Jon, filmmaker, fellow director, father of a 9-day-old baby. Thank you very much for coming to chat to this lovely room of your peers. And please now go home.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
This podcast was recorded at a Directors UK member event. You can hear plenty more directors in conversation by subscribing on the usual streaming platforms. Follow us on social media and find out more about us at directors.uk.com.